2 years ago, I started seriously playing golf. I started out as a 24 handicap, and in a little over a year, I was able to get all the way down to a 6. There we go. Come on. Let's go, dude. Let's go. In today's video, I'm gonna give you all the tips that help me get from a 24 to a 6 handicap so quickly, starting out with the driver and working all the way down to the putter.
Tip number 1, driver.
That was absolutely nuked. We got a little wind at our back. That could go a long ways. All right, starting things off with the driver. This first tip is gonna involve no effort from you, but it's gonna allow you to hit it farther on average, and you're gonna hit it way straighter. So tip number 1 is to shorten your driver. I've actually done a whole video on this, and studies have shown that by shortening your driver, as long as you're not taller than 6'5" or a scratch golfer, everyone else will hit it farther on average, and they're gonna hit it significantly straighter if you just shorten your driver. But this is something that changed my game. When I first started as a 24 handicap, I was miserable off the tee. I never had a look at the green, and I was like, I just want to keep it in play and I'll be happy. So my first year, I shortened my driver all the way from 45.5 inches to 43.5 inches, and I played a really short driver for about that first year until I got really, really confident off the tee. Then, for my second year, I lengthened it to 44.5 inches, and I don't think I'll ever go longer than that. Now, tip number 2 with the driver is more of a mental tip. This is the hardest club to hit. I had a video where I hit this driver 3,000 times in 1 month, and I still struggle to hit my driver. I've never met anyone who has hit their driver perfect 2 rounds in a row. It is an extremely hard club to hit. Even the pros struggle with the driver.
Oh my. Oh my.
That was nearly a shank as well.
Well, it was, but...
So don't get too beat down about it.
Yes,
it takes a lot of practice, it takes a lot of work, and it's not gonna happen overnight.
That is my best shot of the year.
Tip number 2, irons.
All right, tip number 2 should be an obvious one, but if you don't know your distances for each iron yet, you're gonna wanna learn them. So make sure you've gone to the range and figured out how far each iron goes. For me, each iron usually has about a 10-yard range. So for instance, right now I'm 194 away, so I'm pulling out my 7 iron. This will go usually between 190 to 200. Now, another side tip along with that, learn a knockdown shot. So what is a knockdown shot? A knockdown shot is a way to take yardages off of each of your clubs. So let's say I was 175 yards out. I don't really have a club for that. My 8 iron goes 180 to 190. My 9 iron goes 158 to 168. So I have a knockdown shot with my 8 iron that takes about 10 yards off. And all I'll do for that knockdown shot is I'll do the same thing as my full swing, but I'll give no wrist hinge at all. So for whatever reason, I don't know if that's the right way to do it, but for me, it takes 10 yards off of every shot, and it works really, really well for me. Now, tip number 2 with the irons is my only tip that may not apply to everyone. If you can afford it, get a launch monitor or a golf simulator. You can get something like the Mevo Plus, hitting mat, hitting net, all in for like $2,000 even, and then you can play golf all winter long, you can practice at home, and that's what I use to really hone my iron game. Side note, if you want to get the Mevo Plus as cheap as possible, use code GolfBusters10 in our link below. And then my third tip, the thing I used, I got 1 length irons. So every single iron is the same length as a 7 iron. They are myths that you'll lose distance, that the gappings are not correct, but those are all myths, not true. 1 length irons for me are very nice. I have the same swing for every single iron, and that is just a confidence boosting thing for me. Now, when I go to the range, instead of having to feel like I need to practice every iron or feeling like my 5 iron is way different than my 60 degree, they're all the same. So this final tip, it may not apply to you, but if you want some more consistency with the irons, I think 1 length irons is a good fit.
Tip number 3, chipping.
Let's go, baby! Bird!
Come on now.
That's what I'm talking about. All right, so we were gonna go on to pitch shots, those shots that are like 100 to 30 yards from the target, but we ended up in a chipping spot, so we're gonna move right on to chipping next, and we'll get back to pitching in a little bit. Now, for chipping, I'm gonna guarantee if you struggle with chipping or you're a high handicapper, these tips will help you save the most strokes as quick as possible. So the first thing I'm gonna do with chipping, which people make fun of me for, but it works, I'm gonna figure out how far away I am from my target. So So I'll either range it or step it out. So I'm about 9.5 yards away from my target, and I kind of want to clear these off. Now I'm gonna get into why I step it out in a little bit, but the first tip is just how I chip. So I found it's easiest to get good, consistent chips if you put the ball in the back of your stance. I started in the front when I started, tried the middle. The back allows you to get the most consistent contact. So what I'll do, I'll put it kind of in line with the back of my heel. I'll turn my toes, put them close together and put them kind of on a 30-degree angle, but don't have your hips facing that same angle. You want your hips facing towards the ball. Then what I do, I don't hinge my wrists at all. I have straight arms. I kind of do like an arc, kind of an in to out, and I follow through strong and I chip. Now, I'm gonna show you, I'm gonna put this one close and then I'll show you with the distances why I step it out. It's pretty good, right? Right there. Now, people will tell you chipping is all feel, but I think you can really get this down to a yardage and be super precise and put it close every time. So what I'll do, right when I get to the practice green, I'll drop 3 balls down and I'll grab all my wedges. And I'll get in that same chipping stance we talked about, and I'll just do a nice smooth chip, and I'm not even gonna look at a target, I'm just gonna hit it. And I'll hit all 3. That was a bad strike. I probably won't count that one there. And if you notice, the balls 2 in the background, those were 2 good strikes with just a normal chip swing. So I'll step those out. 12 yards. And that's usually what my normal chip is in general, but I know a smooth chip with my 60 degree is gonna go 12 yards. Now the next thing I'll do is I'll do that same chip, but give it some pace, hit it strong, and I'll find the maximum distance that chip goes. So usually my 60 degree with that kind of same motion will go between 12 and 18 yards. So now, anytime I'm 12 or 18 yards away, I'm able to have a swing to get it very, very close to the hole. Then I'll do the same thing with my 54 degree. I'll do the same thing with my gap wedge. So I know my 54 degree is about 18 to 28, gap wedge is 28 to 38. So now I'm not playing a guessing game when I'm trying to chip. I know my yardages and I can put it within 5 feet almost every time. And this is gonna be the fastest way you can save strokes.
Tip number 4, pitch shots.
We're going right at the pin. 73 yards, let's get it. Oh, it's through, bounce, roll up, roll up. Oh, let's freaking go, boys, let's go. All right, now we're gonna work back a little bit. We went from chipping, now we're gonna go to those pitch shots. For me, that's kind of between 80 and 30 yards, but either way, this is a shot a ton of people struggle with. So my first tip with these shots is you wanna be a scraper and you don't wanna hit down on the ball. So one of the things people will tend to do with these shots, these are not shots where you're gonna strike at it, you know, super fast like you would an iron. Like you're still gonna accelerate through the ball, but you're not striking down. So with an iron, when you full swing an iron, you wanna hit down on the ball, and that'll work out well because you make good contact, you're good, but you're swinging so fast, if you're a little behind it, you're still gonna get it to go. But with these shots, the issue is, if you hit down on the ball and you don't hit it perfect, you're not swinging fast enough to get that ball to go to where you want it to go if you don't hit it perfect. So my tip for these is I'm scraping. So instead of hitting down, my thought when I swing these is to scrape kind of through the ball. Scrape it through like this, and that is the #1 tip for me to not fat it and hit it consistent most of the time. Now, tip number 2, very similar to how we figured out our yardages with chipping, we want to figure out our yardages with all our wedges with multiple different swings, which is called a wedge matrix. Similar to chipping, most people will just eyeball these shots, but you really want to have a club and a swing for each shot. So what a wedge matrix is, you have 4 different swings for each club. You have your full swing, which is gonna go, you know, your normal yardage we learned with our irons. You have your knockdown swing, which is gonna take 10 yards off, but then you might have a couple of other swings. So what I'll have with my 54 degree here, I go about 1/4 of the way back in my swing with no hinge, I scrape through and I finish right here. And that will get me a yardage. And then I also have where I go 1/4 of the way back with hinge and I swing through full. And that will get me 4 yardages for this club. 125 with the full swing, 115 with the knockdown swing, 73 to 83 with the 1/4 swing, and then with that scrape swing, this will be about 50 to 60. Now, the reason I have 4 wedges, Learn that with all 4 wedges. And what will happen is now you have a club and a swing for every single yardage within 100 yards. So here I'm gonna try not to mess this up. I got 73 yards to the pin, so I'm gonna use my swing where I go kind of a quarter of the way back, or it feels like a quarter, I should say. I hinge and I strike through, and this will be lighter. If I swung hard, it would probably go long. Let's see how this works. See if we can get a good one on the first one. And there we go. We are pin high. I'll zoom into that so you can see it. We are pin high, and we'd be putting for birdie with about a 10-footer. And it's a little bit left, but again, it's the right distance we want to be, and that's because I know my wedge matrix.
Tip number 5, putting.
Yep.
Let's go! And finally, we're gonna get to the putting. I'll be honest, this is by far the worst part of my game, but I do have a couple of tips that I think will help every golfer. The first tip, always line up your putts. It's something that takes an extra 10 seconds, but it's gonna make you more putts. Lining up, I'm a big believer in that. The next thing is distance control. Distance control is much more important than accuracy to limiting those 3 putts you don't wanna get. So let's see if we can do everything right on the video. First time. Just short, but honestly, that's a pretty normal putt for me. I got good distance, a little more, we're probably in. Now, our final tip, and probably our most important tip, golf takes a lot of practice. A general rule of thumb, if you play 1 time a week, you're gonna stay the exact same. Twice a week, you're gonna get a little bit better. And if you start playing 3 times a week, you're gonna see a ton of improvement. It's a hard game, it's like the stock market, and it takes a ton of practice. If you enjoyed the video, please make sure to subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one.